I'm going to be reading three poems from the book Southwestern Pennsylvania in Song and Story by Frank Cowan, published in 1878. These three poems were all inspired by the murder of Polly Williams, which happened in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, in the year 1810. Polly was approximately 18 years old at the time and working as a maid. She was also in a relationship with a young man named Philip Rogers and expected to marry him. However, there was conflict between the couple, in part because his family was much better off than hers, and it seems that Philip had either never had any real intention of marrying Polly or changed his mind about it. When Polly's body was found in a place known as White Rocks, it was obvious that she had been murdered, and suspicion immediately fell on Philip. But although he was tried for the crime, the jury ultimately decided that the circumstantial evidence was not enough, and Philip was acquitted. This acquittal did nothing to lessen his guilt in the eyes of the general public, and several Pennsylvania writers preserved the memory of the injustice throughout the decades that followed. One of the first, if not the first, retelling was the first poem that I'm going to read, which was written by Samuel Little, who, according to Cowan, was present when Polly's body was moved to be buried. The poem circulated in newspapers and as a broadside, sometimes with alterations to the wording. It is also likely that it may have been sung as a ballad. A lily once fell by a mower's rude prowess. Lambs perished while licking the murderer's hands. A sweet blooming virgin was slain by her lover, while waiting for transport in Hymen's soft bands. Long rains swelled the rivers, black clouds hid the mountains. The vales lay enveloped in misty array. I climbed the wet hills and with heartrending horror surveyed the sad spot where all mangled she lay. Grim rose the huge rocks, and deep sunk were the caverns. With thorns and keen briars the place was o'ergrown. Above, the dark brow of the mountain stood frowning. In the valley sad midnight had built her dark home. Sweet girl, 'twas too rude for thy nuptial chamber. Was it meet that a bride on the cold ground should lay? That the howling of wolves and the screams of the panther should furnish the songs of thy nuptial day? How long didst thou toil up the steep rugged mountain? How weary, how fainting thy delicate frame? Yet fond hope still cheered thee, the moment approaching, to crown thy best hopes and to banish all shame. Say, when did wild gasping succeed to fond toying? Ah, when didst thou find the extent of thy woes? When did the fond lover transform to a demon, his purpose accursed, for how could he disclose? I see thee, all pale and all trembling before him. I hear thy entreaties, thy heart-piercing cries. But poor lonely victim, no helper was near thee, no father, no mother, to answer thy sighs. The conflict begins, his hands are uplifted. I see thy blood streaming, thy screams are in vain. Rough rocks will not hear thee, his heart is still harder. 'Twas adamant from hell that composed his frame. Those fair eyes so lately with tenderness beaming, now roll with wild horror and smart with keen pain, and soon, very soon, will be closed up forever. No sun of tomorrow will greet them again. At thy wide gaping wounds thy poor spirit waits fluttering, a path all unknown she must quickly pursue. A faint, a last sigh from thy bursting heart whispered, poor traitor, poor murderer, I bid thee adieu. Ye rocks, ye were marble, or sure you'd have melted, but with the cursed traitor ye two were combined. Though stained with their heart's blood ye still stand relentless, betrayed and deserted, no friend could she find. Ye caverns that groaned when her heartstrings were breaking, could you not have concealed the poor tortured fair? Or your grim jaws expanding have seized her tormentor and plunged his black soul to eternal despair? And where slipped the thunder, the lightning's red anger? Could no friendly genius have darted it down? Had heaven forgot to be present in danger when lovers proved murderers and helpers were gone? Still groan ye deep caverns, still shriek ye dark alleys. Let the lost murderer witness who near you shall stay. The long-lengthened anguish, the soul-rending tortures that closed the sad eve of her nuptial day. Poor injured spirit, thy murderer is living, for justice, grown weary, forbore to pursue. By lawyers defended, by jurors acquitted, his presence detested still tortures our view. If justice on earth is too often perverted, if lawyers can rescue the worst of mankind, the great court of heaven is not to be bribed. There, poor injured innocents a refuge can find. 'Twas piteous, poor Polly, that strangers' rude shoulders through thickets should bear thee down to thy long home. Rough pines of the mountains thy soft limbs supporting, and no gentle relative to weep at thy tomb. 'Twas the cold hand of strangers that placed thy death pillow, that closed thy sunk eyes and thy winding sheet gave. No friend stood around thee to sing a soft requiem, no tear of a parent to soften thy grave. Ye spirits that sit round the grave of the murdered, each evening chant forth her unparalleled woes. Ye cold clods that hide her, lie light on her bosom. Once torn by rough rocks, thy soft flesh asks repose. Sweet sufferer, sleep on, and may heaven protect thee. May angels sit watching thy innocent clay, till the last trumpet sounds and thy soft slumbers breaking calls thee home to the realms of ineffable day. This second poem was written by Ashbel Fairchild Hill, who also wrote a novel based on the murder of Polly Williams, which was titled The White Rocks, or The Robber's Den. The Murder of Polly Williams. The sun is glowing at the close of day, bathing the landscape with celestial fire. The earth is decked with all the flowers of May, and hills and dales smile in their fresh attire. The mountains rear their lofty heads on high, they too are clad with foliage fresh and green, as though they fain would kiss the azure sky, and thus add grace of action to the scene. The evening air is pleasant, calm, and still. No sighing breeze or tender zephyr blows against the face of the ascending hill to stir the wild vine or the mountain rose. Half hid among the trees, full many a cliff clings to the mountainside, but there is one that rises far above the rest as if to catch the last rays of the setting sun. So high it towers that from its lofty crest full 30 miles of rolling hills are seen, all in the pleasant garb of springtide dressed, and many vales that sleeping lie between. What quiet reigns, the air how soft and mild, the old gray rocks how silent and how grave, how motionless the vines and bushes wild, the trees how still, their branches do not wave. But hark, what piercing scream breaks on the air? From yonder cliff that rears so high its crest, what dread, what danger, or what pain is there? What mortal so affrighted or distressed? Or was it but a panther on the height that shrieked so like a human in dismay? Did it but call a comrade for the night to go and seek some unsuspecting prey? Hark, 'tis repeated. 'Tis a human shriek, a maiden's voice. It calls aloud in fear. What danger threatens? What aid does she seek? Who is there in this wild place to hear? Do prowling wolves come swift upon her track, emboldened by the near approach of night? And does she, to avert the mad attack, flee to the summit of the rocky height? Ah no, behold a more vindictive foe, a murderer. She struggles in his grasp. He fain would hurl her to the ground below, but still she shrieks and clings with frantic clasp. He heeds her not. Her prayers are all in vain. His soul is hellish fire. His heart is stone. His rude hand thrusts her to the brink again. She shrieks and falls, and now the deed is done. At such a deed the blushing orb of day covers his face behind a western hill, as if indeed ashamed to longer stay and gaze on acts so dreadful, base, and ill. The murderer flees, his soul beset with fear. He starts away amid the gathering night. His deed is seen, avenging hands are near. They swift pursue him in his hasty flight. They've gone, the murderer and avengers too. He rushes down the mountain like the wind. On wings of vengeance they as swift pursue, and leave the solemn scene of death behind. Where yonder cliff arises, draw thou near. In awe, remove the covering from thy head. Be grave and thoughtful, drop a silent tear. Thou standest in the presence of the dead. There lies the body, lifeless, bruised, and torn. Thy soul has barely winged its flight away. The wild vines sigh, the rude rocks laugh in scorn at such a helpless, useless lump of clay. So beautiful a single hour ago, so full of life, the home of sense and light. But ah, how dull, how dumb, and lifeless now. How changed in looks, how ghastly to the sight. Ah, maiden, what infatuating dream hath brought thee here to meet the murderer's wrath? Did some impatient friend across the stream direct thy footsteps up the mountain path? Was there a beckon from an unseen hand, a noiseless whisper from a silent breath, to call thy spirit from the lower land and urge thy body to untimely death? Oh, stand aside, impenetrable veil that hides the land of shadows from our sight. Oh, let us see the waiting friends that hail the maiden's spirit in its upward flight. Ah, could we see the liberated soul enter the portals of the land above, received by waiting parents at the goal and clasped in arms of everlasting love, then we might turn without a single tear and fix our gaze on the deserted clay. The picture of the spirit's heavenly cheer would surely drive the earthly gloom away. Let not the tender form lie here tonight. Let not the pale cheek catch the falling dew. The mournful owl is screaming on the height, as though himself were filled with sorrow too. The veil of night is falling thick and fast. The glowworm dances on the mountainside. On stealthy wings the bat goes flitting past. The whippoorwill is chattering far and wide. May not some hungry wolf scent from afar those drops of blood that sprinkle the white face, and steal up in the darkness to devour the helpless form, once full of life and grace? Shall flesh like this feed savage beasts of prey among these lonely hills now wrapped in gloom? Oh no. Come, friends, bear the cold form away, and with due rites enclose it in the tomb. The third and last poem that I'm going to read was written by Frank Cowan. The Hoary Old Hero of Hell. The night was dark, but the campfire shone with ruddy, flickering light on the mountain's crown of ragged stone that merry November night, when the cup went round with a song or jest among the merry three, till the midnight came like a bat of flame flitting hither and thither in glee. The youngest was a beardless boy with a dimple in his chin, a maiden's mouth and the triumph of truth in a soul untouched by sin. The second was a man in years and acquaintance with the world, with an eye ringed with red and a heavy head and a white lip slightly curled, while the third was grizzled at 30 and 3, his visage scored and crossed, as if when a boy he had gambled for joy and staked his manhood and lost. "Ye give us a toast, my beardless boy," the grizzled gambler said, while the man in years, aglow in tears, nudged his feet and nodded his head. "I drink to the maiden of womanly worth with her heart and open eye, whom sinless to keep as a babe asleep I willingly would die." "Well said, my boy, but hear us all," the grizzled gambler said, "before we drain our cups again and betake ourselves to bed." I drink to the wife who takes this life as she takes the wind and weather, and who says we'll share the foul and fair, we'll live and die together. Well said, my maudlin half and half, the grizzled gambler said. But before I quaff to a cry and a laugh, I'll drink to the living dead. I drink to the mother who above any other, who has wielded to my will, and who loves to die, fondly swearing that I am kindest when I kill. The gambler said with a toss of his head and a flash of his coal-black eye, when a sudden sound that came from the ground upheld his glass on high. Well said, thou youth, with thy maiden's mouth, well said, thou half and half, well said, thou son of the evil one, but hear me ere ye quaff. The earth spake with an old man's voice betwixt a gasp and a groan, when a sudden blast of the wind swept past and chilled the boy to the bone. When a sudden blast of the wind swept past and made the campfire glare, till another gust swept the fiery dust into ashes in the air. And all was the gloom of the silent tomb on the mountain that merry midnight, when a crack in the crown of ragged stone revealed a ghastly light, and lo, there appeared the long white beard of an old, old man clinging fast to the very edge of the white rock ledge whence Polly Williams was cast. The beardless boy, though he shuddered with fright, sprang to his feet to save. But touch that ghost, and thou art lost. That brink is of the grave, the maudlin man said, as over his head the boy turned his cup and fell, while the grizzled man laughed as his liquor he quaffed to the hoary old hero of hell. And again filled his cup, when the boy stood up, aghast in horror and wonder, like a statue in form in the midst of a storm of lightning and of thunder. Have courage, my boy, and fill again, in spite of this damned ghost. For since we have burst into being accursed, let us live among the lost, the grizzled man said with a toss of his head and a flash from his coal-black eye. But the boy, kneeling down, crushed his cup on the stone and began to pray and cry. When lo, the old, old man with the bound of a youth overflowing with joy, sprang away from the edge of the white rock ledge and sate down by the boy, and spake to him with a strengthened voice, but with many a gasp and groan, while the maudlin man wept as he smilingly slept, and the grizzled man drank alone. Now Christ thee save, thou weeping boy, now Christ thee save and see, for thou hast given, through the mercy of heaven, a moment of rest to me, a moment of rest to the living dead, doomed as I live to damn. The hero of hell, it is said and well, for I, Philip Rogers, am doomed to hang on the edge of the white rock ledge until the end of time, and know no rest save when I attest to youth the course of crime. Ah, God, how many, many years in agony I have hung to the ragged edge of the white rock ledge where Polly Williams clung, and felt that wretched woman's woe and the pang of her mother's pain, till the crushing stone had broken the bone and benumbed the dizzy brain. And over and over and over again, with every hurried breath, with every thought in a frenzied brain wrought, I have died her awful death, with never a respite till I spake unto thy toast, O youth, and withheld the brim of the cup of crime from thy merry maiden's mouth. Yea, Christ thee save from my living grave for thy timely, timely toast, for thou, O youth, with the maiden's mouth, hast eased a damned ghost. And in this moment of rest from woe, the course of my life to scan, list while I tell what hath befell at least one sinful man. My father died to leave me a babe with a fondling mother alone, when to woe I grew fast with the wealth he'd amassed, as will a widow's son. I knew no wish ungratified, nor appetite unappeased. I kicked and I cried and resistance defied, I'd do and did as I pleased. I never knew how fast I grew till I held as idle toys my father's tomb and my mother's womb when I was shunned by the boys. But what I cared for company, in my selfishness accursed, I was only too glad to go from bad to worse and then to worst. The pleasures of boyhood did but cloy in my self-sated mouth, when into the wood in solitude I wandered a yearning youth. I was possessed with a fierce unrest, which selfishness could not still, when I stole to the edge of the white rock ledge myself in despair to kill. When lo, as I stood in this murderous mood betwixt despair and death, on the ragged edge of the rocky ledge my shadow fell beneath, and athwart the face of a mountain maid in search of the raw red root, to bring relief to a mother's grief with the breath of death in her throat. When looking up the maid espied me in my murderous mood, and shrieking outright in dismay and affright, she fled into the wood. Aback I crept from the dizzy edge, and adown the fearful height, when I pursued the maid through the wood, till I clutched her in her flight. I knew not why I followed her, nor what a maid might be, unless it was no other cause than that she fled from me. Ah God, how often man as I, betwixt despair and death, stands on the edge of a rocky ledge till his shadow falls beneath, and athwart the face of the maiden of chance as it hath me befell, and from that hour to doom his life to the tomb and his soul to heaven or hell. For till that hour I caught the maid and held her in my arms. I never knew that my yearning grew to feed on a woman's charms. I never knew there was beauty on earth till I looked in the face of the girl. In her blue eye a tear, starting trembling in fear, then running to hide in a curl that grew like a golden vine in an alabaster vase, that daintily made of the sunshine a shade that half concealed her face. I never knew that I had a heart, but only a selfish will, till against my breast the maiden I pressed, and in it felt throbbing a thrill. And how or when is beyond my ken, but on her warm white neck, by chance I espied what her curls could not hide, a dainty coal-black speck. When with burning bliss I imprinted a kiss upon the quivering spot, while still and clear rose her shriek in fear, which I in my rapture heard not, till I felt a hand on my shoulder laid like a falling, trembling leaf, when my arms became numb and my tongue and lips dumb, and I stole away like a thief. I could have killed both the mother and maid for resisting my desire. But I held my breath when I felt that her death would not extinguish my fire. When lo, I mild and milder grew, to win what death denied, and into the wood in a feverish mood to woo the maid I hied. I sought the place where my shadow fell, and I dug the raw red root to bring relief to her mother's grief with the breath of death in her throat. And down before the cabin door of the mother and the maid, the raw red root with bread and fruit in the dead of night I laid, and again at the cabin door upon the mountain side, I laid the root with the bread and fruit till the maiden's mother died. When, hark, I heard a voice in the night, come back, it said. I entered the door, and sate before the living and the dead. And over the corpse I held my hand in that of the mournful maid, as I plighted my troth with an awful oath that she never should be betrayed. When lo, the head of the ghastly dead uprose from the humble hearse, when the maiden fell down and lay in a swoon while I smote the corpse with a curse. And again, when the corpse was laid in the grave, I kissed the mournful maid, I plighted my troth with an awful oath that she never should be betrayed. And while I stood in the murderous mood, with my heel on the upturned clod, to kick the head of the ghastly dead if it rose above the sod, ah God, how swift speed the moments of grief on the wings of expectant bliss! How soon cease to flow the streamlets of woe when sipped at their source in a kiss! Scarce a fortnight had sped when I knelt at the bed of the motherless mountain maid, and I vowed and I swore, as I'd done before, that she never should be betrayed. Ah God, the fierce flash in my frenzied brain, and in my hot blood the thrill, when the maid in despair clasped her hands in prayer and yielded to my will. The morning came, and the golden sun rose over the mountain's crest, when I plighted my troth with my awful oath, dissolved with the morning mist. The maiden was mine, my slave, my toy, to be caressed or cursed, and again I was glad to go from bad to worse and then to worst. But in good or evil, a god or devil, unto the mountain maid, she knelt at the head of my midnight bed and for my welfare prayed. Ah God, to see that woman of worth devote to me her life, had I not burst into being accursed, I had worshipped in her a wife self-sacrificing fond, to hallow the humblest clod, and to lift into heaven sinful man forgiven with the earthly arms of God. But I had burst into being accursed, and I could not worship a wife, nor the heaven-blessed mother when enclosing another she lives a double life. For scarcely had 8 months come and gone, when lo, in a murderous mood, I led the maid mother through the shade of the mountain's leafy wood. The bird was blithe on the birch tree bough, and mirthful music made, but blither was I without melody unto the mother maid. There dwells a man of God, I began, in a humble hut of stone. Beyond the edge of the white rock ledge, come, he shall make us one. Come, he shall make us man and wife, I softly said, and smiled, and a heaven of earth beyond the birth of our love-begotten child. The violet blue when bathed in dew is bright in the morning sun, but brighter her eye when she said, "Till I die, God's will through thine be done." She took my arm as we walked along through the wild unbroken heath, when I felt how great was her double weight and hot and short her breath. "Come, let us rest a moment here," I said to the mountain maid, "on the ragged edge of the white rock ledge. Come, do not be afraid. For why, God wot, 'tis a hallowed spot, for here thou saved my life, to be unto me to eternity my Savior and a wife." On the ragged edge of the white rock ledge we stood with bated breath, she light in her love as the bright height above, I dark as the depth beneath. When lo, from out of the darkness came unto me in my murderous mood a lightning flash with a thunder crash that burned my brain and blood. I seized the woman by the neck, and with resistless force, o'er the ragged edge of the white rock ledge, I hurled her with a curse. But God, have mercy on my soul, and Christ thee save and see, my beardless boy and thy guileless joy, for the rest thou givest me. The woman fell, but on a crag, scarce a foot or twain beneath the ragged edge of the white rock ledge, she clung with the clutch of death. I could have saved the double life that hung suspended there, for the wind from below began to blow and raised to my hand her hair. The wind from below began to blow and raised to my hand her hair, and in the breath that came from beneath I heard the woman's prayer. "Thy will, O God, be done on earth as it is done in heaven, but let the love of a mother move the Father to be forgiven." But I had burst into being accursed, and closed to Christ were my ears, for what is addressed to the God of the blessed, the devil of the damned never hears. And again, from out of the darkness came unto me in my murderous mood a lightning flash with a thunder crash that burned my brain and blood. I seized a stone, and looking down into the upturned eye, I raised it above the look of love that beheld me even then in the sky. And I held it above the look of love till down went the ragged stone, with a hurried rush of the air and a crush of living flesh and bone. And the rolling head of a brain benumbed hung over the depth beneath, while fast to the edge of the white rock ledge clutched the rigid fingers of death. When kneeling down on the ragged stone in an attitude of prayer, with a blasphemous curse that redoubled my force, I kicked the corpse clinging there. I heard a scraping, tearing sound, and then a distant thud, when all was still as death, until I heard my throbbing blood. Until I heard my throbbing blood with my heart and my brain, with every beat that thud repeat, and the awful curse of Cain. Upon my belly then I fell, and began like a snake to crawl, lest over the edge of the white rock ledge in my wickedness I should fall. Ah God, the flash in my fearful brain, and in my blood the chill, when I felt the first pang of the worst, that I never myself could kill. Aback I crawled from the dizzy edge, and adown the fearful height, and then beneath until dear death appeared in my sight. Ah God, how calm and sweet the look of death to the accursed! I gazed at the dead before me laid till my eyeballs seemed to burst. And then I began to form a plan to bury the dead out of sight, but I tried in vain to stand again, erect in manhood's might. For on my neck the double weight of the mother maid was hung, and my fingers closed into those of the ghost that to the cliff edge clung. Ah God, the dead before me laid, I could not even touch, for when I placed my hand on the waist it shrank away from my clutch. It was the living within the dead, and from that moment for I became, in the dead, the living laid, to never, never die. Adown the mountainside I crept, and into the town in the vale, where every man whom I met began to tell me an awful tale of a dark deed done by the evil one in a fondling father's guise. Beneath the edge of the white rock ledge a murdered mother lies. But I never raised my heavy head, nor to the tale replied. till I cursed the law for refusing to draw the gibbet noose when I lied. Not guilty, I said, with a toss of my head, and withdrew my neck from the noose. For to speak the truth with my evil mouth, my tongue I could not loose. When lo, my mother appeared in court with my father's silken purse, when the solemn oath dissolved into froth, and then into naught with my curse. Not guilty, returned the jury suborned, while the judge gave a knowing look, when I tied my shoes with the dangling noose and crawled outside the dock. I crawled outside the dock with a groan, while to the railing I clung, as upon the edge of the white rock ledge the murdered mother hung. While one and all my path forsook with a shudder and a groan, until as I'd burst into being accursed with my mother, I was alone. Oh God, the woe of the wretched heart no human tongue can tell, when the mother that nursed becomes the worst embodiment of hell. I began to curse when lo, my lips became as a statue's dumb. Then I tried to cut my mother's throat when my lips grew weak and numb. And still with a love that increased with age, she pierced my wretched heart. Ah, God, the curse that made her love worse than a barbed and poisoned dart. When at length, at my side, in bed, she died, where I lay sick and alone, crooked, shriveled, and thin, and hoary with sin like a bent and bearded bone. And there she lay, while the summer's sun shone like a glowing coal, till with every breath my mother in death made a sickening stench on my soul. And there she lay, while the summer's sun upon her rotting fell, till I lay in bed, the living dead, devouring my mother in hell. For the hellhound of hunger was gnawing within, and must be glut with food, and I was accursed with a hellish thirst, till I sucked my mother's blood. I ate her flesh, and I drank her blood until I was alone, crooked, shriveled, and thin, and hoary with sin, abed with another bone. When lo, there appeared a beauteous maid in pity at my bed, and she buried the bone of my mother alone, and lay down in its stead. But pang upon pang is the pastime of hell, one woe upon another. Than that beauteous maid beside me laid, I had rather my rotting mother. For why, God wot, her eye was blue, and golden was her hair, and she knelt at the head of my midnight bed in holy, holy prayer. We lived together as man and wife for 20 years and one, and she bore me 7 fair daughters of heaven, but never a sin-sired son. And one by one my daughters died, ere they could sin or shame, all save the first of the 7 nursed in holy wedlock's name. When her hands on her breast, their mother at rest, made an end of her holy life. Ah, God, to dwell in the hot blast of hell with an angel of heaven to wife. But pang upon pang is the pastime of hell, one woe upon another. Than the beauteous first of the 7 nursed, I had rather their angel mother. For why, God wot, her eye was blue, and golden was her hair, and she knelt at the head of my midnight bed in holy, holy prayer. When low as she hied to the mountain's side to dig the raw red root, to bring relief to her father's grief with the breath of death in his throat. On the trodden ground a snake she found, benumbed with an early frost, when the senseless form unto life to warm, she laid it in her breast. And when she stood beside my bed with the precious raw red root, Christ, Christ, behold, a serpent of gold coiled around her throbbing throat. Christ, Christ, behold, a serpent of gold looked into her upturned eye, and while hissing it rang, and it sank its fang, that before me my daughter might die. Down fell the maid across my bed, where I lay sick and alone, crooked, shriveled, and thin, and hoary with sin, like a bent and bearded bone. When the serpent of gold uncoiled from the neck of my daughter on the bed, and began to twine in coils about mine, and to raise its awful head, till lo, it looked into my eye, while with hissing loud it rang, and kill in vain, again and again, it darted its deadly fang. While my daughter's corse across me laid, in the winter's breath of frost, congealed into another woe, a ghastly, icy ghost. And on my breast lay the icy ghost, in its hand the raw red root, till my blood ran as cold as the golden fold of the snake around my throat. And on my breast lay the icy ghost, till my beard froze over my mouth, when I was accursed with a burning thirst, in a hell of eternal drought. But pang upon pang is the pastime of hell, one woe upon another. I had but felt that my beard would not melt when I began to smother. To smother, God wot, while I lay in the bed with the ghost and the serpent alone, crooked, shriveled, and thin, and hoary with sin like a bent and bearded bone. When lo, a blast of the wind swept past and carried me through the air to the ragged edge of the white rock ledge and left me clinging there. And left me clinging there, and for I, doomed as I live to damn, for I had burst into being accursed, I, Philip Rogers, am. I am the living dead, God wot, of whom the people tell. Whenever a maid by a man is betrayed, the hoary old hero of hell. With a sudden start, the beardless boy sprang up from the frosty ground and stared aghast, while the angry blast swept by with a sullen sound. But in the dim light of the dawn he saw not comrades twain, nor the damned ghost of bone and frost that frenzied yet his brain. He saw but the spot where the fire he had built to protect against frost and fright, beneath the edge of the white rock ledge where he must pass the night. Adown the mountainside he rushed and entered his mother's door. My son, what deed hast thou done? Thou'st never done before. But yestermorn thine eye was bright, and blood red was thy cheek. My son, what deed hast thou done, that thou hast not tongue to speak? Oh, I have coursing the red fox upon the mountainside. Till belated I lay, till the dawning of day, the beardless boy replied. Thy hounds I have kennelled and chained overnight, and no ticks in their hair I espy. My son, what deed hast thou done, that thou hast the tongue to lie? Oh, I have been waiting the red deer at the lick on the mountainside, till I belated lay till the dawning of day, the beardless boy replied. Thy rifle is hung on its pins overnight above my unguarded bed. My son, what deed hast thou done that hath made thee the living dead? Oh, I have seen the damned ghost upon the mountainside, beneath the edge of the white rock ledge, the beardless boy replied. If thou hast seen the damned ghost where Polly Williams fell, my son, the deed thou hast done of the hoary old hero of hell. Come, my son, and break thy fast. But wherefore dost thou start? Come, and eat of thy mother's meat, and drink the blood of my heart. Come, my son, ere upon my course the sun glows like a coal, when with every breath thy mother in death will make a stench of thy soul. The beardless boy with a heavy head crept out of his mother's sight, and lo, by the edge of the white rock ledge, he has taken a hurried flight. He has taken a hurried flight, God wot, across the mountain and moor, until he stood in a lonely wood before a cabin door, where hark, he hears a voice within, appealing unto heaven. O may the love of a mother move the father to be forgiven. And he has taken a woman in black upon the kirk of stone, where the holy priest, through the love of Christ, has made them one flesh and bone. And he has taken a woman in white away from the kirk of stone, till lo, on the edge of the white rock ledge he stands with his bride alone. And he has knelt with his bride in white in holy prayer, and God has he blessed for giving him rest from clinging in hell ever there. And down the mountainside he has gone and entered his mother door. My son, what deed hast thou done? I never saw this woman before. Oh, I have taken this woman to wife into the kirk of stone, where the holy priest, through the love of Christ, has made us one flesh and bone. My son, the deed thou hast done of a bearded man and good. No more shalt thou eat of thy mother's meat and drink of her heart's hot blood. Thine eye has regained its winsome light, and its red is thy cheek, while the tongue of truth hangs in thy mouth, the word of God to speak. The word of God to speak alway, and thy tale of torture to tell, whenever a maid by a man is betrayed, the hoary old hero of hell. That thou mayst give a moment of rest unto the living dead, he that sleeps in sin while his conscience within makes a hell for his soul of his bed.